See, thank you so much. I'm so excited to have folks that I've spoken to in the last couple of weeks join this call. Um, and if this is your first time, we're going to post the link for all of the Chat with the Chief series that we've hosted this year. They are free. They're on my YouTube channel. You're more than welcome to go and check them out. The intent behind all of this, oh, thanks, Daniela. I like my glasses too. The intent behind all of this is to help folks understand the role of a chief of staff. I'm currently a chief of staff, and I work with a lot of professionals who either employ chief of staffs, they are chief of staffs, they have their business, like it's all parts of the gamut. And so, really, for the last year, what we've been doing is talking to people to provide you all with different perspectives on the chief of staff role. And if it's either something that you're in or something that you're exploring, it just gives you more information. And so I'm super thrilled to have you all here. I'm going to go ahead and let's find my slides so we can move on to our next one. So let me tell you a little bit about who I am. My name is Anne-Marie Otanes. Last year, I wrote a book about being a chief of staff, and I received such wonderful reception that I'm actually writing my second one. And so that's coming out. My goal is next year. I've had an opportunity to work for some amazing, amazing companies. So it helps you understand why I have the perspectives that I do. And this just lists a few of the organizations that I have worked for. I'm the chief of staff architect. I have over 15 years of experience in the space. I'm always learning, always, always, always. And so these are some of the credentials that I have. And then I also created a Chief of Staff Academy. And this is for people who feel like they may be doing the job and they don't have the title, or you are doing the job, you want to up level. It attracts a wide variety of individuals. And so if you're curious about the Chief of Staff Academy, my assistant will put a link in the chat, and feel free to set up some time with me so we can talk a little bit more about the Chief of Staff Academy. Now that's out of the way, let's talk about our special guest. We started the year off with a bang, and this is a gift to you. It's a gift for me. I met Krys. I feel like I've known Krys forever. Let me just say that right now. I feel like I've known her forever. When we met, we clicked instantly. She is a chief of staff at NACE, the National Associations of Colleges and Employers. You will feel and hear her brilliance on this call today. I am so excited for you. And Krys, I want to give you an opportunity to tell my listeners who you are and introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Anne-Marie. Thank you for inviting me. I feel the same way. I feel like we have known each other for a while, but let's chalk that up to that when you are chief of staff or you're doing that role functionally without the title, either way, we are able to speak to each other in sort of a shorthand that we just get. So it built that camaraderie very quickly. So also, you're just wonderful. So that's a little bit of what it is. Um, but to introduce myself, my name is Krys Ardayfio. I am the Chief of Staff at the National Association of Colleges and Employers. I spent 25 years in economic development, which includes workforce development, finance, real estate, kind of like Jane of all trades, right? Which is very translatable to a Chief of Staff role. Within that time, I did work in higher ed and workforce development, and then I also oversaw apprenticeships and career services. So I do a lot of career coaching, career advising, which really plays nicely when you are the right-hand person of your principal, whether that's your CEO. So I am the chief of staff to the CEO, National Association of Employers. And from my time in coaching, I also prepared MBA students for chief of staff roles. And so that's really where I got like super familiar with like, well, what is the role? What do you need to succeed? What are the expectations? And it varies by industry and by company and company size. And so that's really how I got familiar with the chief of staff role. So when they called me and this role had come open, it's an inaugural chief of staff role, I felt like I could do it. And here we are some years later doing it.
Awesome, awesome. And I
Yeah.
know you're doing it well, doing it very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, folks, the format for this, if this is your first time here, is that you're invited to listen in on this conversation that Krys and I are having. If you've got questions, either raise your hand or post it in the chat because we will be taking questions at the end, about 10 minutes before we're over. We will open the floor to any questions at that point if you want to ask them then. But we will, if we will stop mid conversation to answer your questions. So let me turn off my slides because we'll have one more slide at the end, but there's no slide where it's just me and Krys having a conversation. And so, Krys, one of the things that I've been telling folks that has me excited about talking to you is this concept of emotional regulation. Can you tell us what that is, and especially what that is for a chief of staff?
Right. So, emotional. So we most often hear about or see emotional dysregulation, right? And that can look like poor decision making under stress. That can look like saying things you wish you hadn't said. That can look like rushing to judgment, rushing to make a decision because we feel pressure or we feel anxious. And so, emotional regulation is the ability to manage and control your emotions. And it doesn't mean that you don't, it means that you do, in fact, but you actually feel equipped and know how to navigate those. You know how to ask for space to process your feelings or to ask for time to think or how to structure your day so that it's the least stressful on you, as well as how to have these communications and conversations that no doubt will have some conflict or some rubs. Excuse me, sorry for that. But that you're able to navigate that. And that's what emotional regulation kind of looks like. And for a chief of staff role, and we'll dig into that, what does that look like in your day to day role?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And when you and I had first talked and you had brought this up, like it seems like we're all thinking about it, but why is it so critical? Like, why is it so essential for leaders today?
Mm. Right. So, emotional regulation is a non technical skill. And non technical skills make up 85% of job success, of your job success, and the people that are probably relying on you or that you are managing or that you are helping to take care of professionally, right? So it is
Hmm.
essential that we find our emotional regulation as well as a slew of other non technical skills. But emotional regulation seems to be the one that is the most overlooked, in my opinion.
Hmm.
We ask or polled who here has had any training on emotional regulation. We get some training on EQ, right? But not
Right.
necessarily the emotional regulation aspect of it. The other part is well being and mental health is considered a public health crisis. We know
Mhm.
impacts work. Those are some of the number one reasons that people separate from their company. And we know that some of us in our roles have to let people go and have those difficult conversations, or we also oversee HR or HR activities. And so that's one of the things that we know is that people don't always leave jobs because they are not technically skilled. It has to do with like this, how we navigate the workplace and our feelings.
Mm.
And so there isn't a lot of formal training around that that we can go and seek out. But I've got some tips to how to find that.
Nice, nice. And again, it feels like there's tons of resources, like you said, for technical training. And it almost feels like the expectation is we already know how to practice EQ. So it should be something that's inherent in us. And what I'm hearing from you is no, we might have some of those skills, but just like any other skill, whether it's a hard or soft skill, we need
Mhm.
to work on that. For chief of staffs, we know that we're always in these really high pressure types of situations. What are some of your tips? You said you were going to talk about that. What are some of your tips or practices that can help leaders just effectively respond instead of just reacting?
Right. Yeah. Well, number one is the education and awareness piece, like we're having this conversation. Number one, even know that it's a thing, that there is an area. skill that you could be harnessing, working on, that if you master, other people will notice and see you as this very level-headed professional, this expert who seems to never lose their cool, someone who's incredibly even and effective. So just being aware that, number one, this even exists. So now you can go and Google emotional regulation, and you
Mm-hmm.
all of these resources for that. That's kind of one of the problems, that is that there are resources everywhere and it's not very formal, but at least pick one. And I'll talk about a few, but at least pick one and
Right.
get started on that, something that resonates with you. So once you are at least aware, and then you start to do a little education on it, reading up on it, reading some books, listen to some podcasts, talk to other chiefs of staff who are doing this work as well. The next thing is awareness of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Got to know how you feel. You've got to be able to read your own feelings before you can foretell the feelings of others, which is what we have to do with our principal. You got to notice when they're stressed. You got to notice when they're spread too thin. You've got to notice when they're overwhelmed, because you're expected to also help manage that. So you got to be good at being self-aware, um, and knowing when you are really about to be compromised, and then learning to avoid that. That's the final phase of that, is learning how to avoid some of those stressors and hardships, and learning then to navigate them. Some of the things that I use: number one, everybody uses their calendar and their schedule. Be looking at that and seeing, like, how stressed are we? Some
Mm-hmm.
about biology and just the way that we function and that we're set up, is that we tend to do better when it is earlier in our workday, and whatever time that is for you, you
Wow.
better. It has to do with this thing called thin slicing. It's a whole neuro thing, but basically we tend to take in so much information, and we get decision fatigue also, and so
Mm-hmm.
slice and dice information as it comes in to make it make the most sense. And
Gotcha.
day we get more and more exhausted and tired, and we make poor decisions, right? So looking at your schedule and managing it that way. I also journal. And I,
Mm.
like, this thing that folks are doing, and you think, well, how do you operationalize that? I operationalize my journaling. So I journal, I plug in at GPT, and I have some prompts, and I it helps me figure out, what does my pattern look like? How am I ebbing and flowing? Where am I at in my emotional journey right now? And so if I'm having a rough week or a tough day, I know to start with my tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Meetings if I need to, not being as vocal in meetings if I need to, rearranging some things, all of
Wow.
taking some time away. Those things, that's kind of how I work it, all the way from education and awareness to skills to be able to manage.
Wow. So I never thought about using AI for journaling because I journal, I time block my calendar, and then I simply just step away from my desk sometimes. And I know that not everybody has that privilege to be able to do that. But I'm at a place in my career where I actually can do that, and I take it very seriously. Some of the wonderful people on this call, I have been chatting with them for a while, and as you know, we recently adopted a little girl, 4 months old, the light of my life. And I tell everybody I have a new boss. And when my new boss is speaking to me, I step away from the desk because that is my new normal, which I love. But because I have tried so hard in the past to make sure that I establish some boundaries, being able to step into that new chapter of my life has been something that I've been able to do a little bit smoothly. It's still, I mean, newborns, for everybody that's got kids, newborns, woof. But setting up, um, those time blocks, or like you were saying, learning how to read yourself. So, I'm getting close to 100. I got to do something. I can't take this last meeting because if I take it, I joke with my team. I'm like, if you catch me right after Christmas, I'm approving everything.
Right, right.
Everything's going to get approved. I'm in a good mood, so send it to me. But and even though we joke about that, but it's still along the same lines of understanding yourself and putting those practices in place. And you named a few of those practices. What are other things that we should consider putting in place?
Right. And congratulations also, Anne Marie. That's so fantastic. And that is your new boss. I have six bosses other than my boss, right? I'm a parent, and we have parents and caregivers on here. No matter where you are in that journey or season of being a caregiver, it is something that does impact how we work. Before COVID, we used to think that we had a work persona and a home persona, and we very quickly found out you do not, right? You bring those feelings and emotions with you to work. So it is incredibly important. If you are a human being that exists amongst other human beings, and we all do, that you learn how to navigate that when you're going to bring some.
Mhm.
And so the other things that I do, I'm glad that you journal. By the way, start journaling either electronically or scan your journal entries because it can change it over to text, which you can then enter into Chat GPT and get you some good prompts go
Woo.
and kind of figure out where you are with that. Some
Um,
things I use, and I like to show people how to find things as well, is to actually go into Google, and you can go there right now and type in mental health first aid. That's like the very first starting place because when you think about emotional regulation, you can almost think about it like CPR. Um, Most heart incidents, it's something like 80 something percent also of heart incidents do not occur in a hospital. So that's why CPR started back in the 60s because it's mostly lay people, right? You're just walking down the street, you're just in the mall, and this incident happens. And if you've ever taken CPR, you know that you are equipped to handle that situation until professionals arrive, right?
right.
And so I like to think of mental health first aid as that kind of CPR for the feelings. And so what we know is that, like, when you have some good emotional regulation tactics or equipping, that you can kind of hold it together until the professionals arrive. Because I also
Mhm.
promote professionals, be seeing a professional. Every good therapist has a good therapist. Every good chief of staff kind of acts as a therapist. So we should also have a or a career advisor or a coach or something like that to help us along. The other thing that I use besides the journaling, and I am mental health first aid certified, is I got a certificate from Indiana University where I used to work at the School of Medicine, and I worked with this group, and they had numerous 14, 15 faculty come together and put together something that they call the trauma informed approach. So if you Google Indiana University trauma informed certificate, that will pop up. That is free. It is free 99. So that is a certificate. You do it online. It's completely asynchronous. It takes a couple of hours. You can spread it out over the week. I found it to be clutch in me.
Wow.
No matter what goes on, I feel equipped to hold it
Mhm.
together until I find the next thing to actually do to address the issue, to solve the problem. Um,
Gotcha.
and that created a lot of confidence. And people know me for that. Anything happens, I feel very equipped and confident, like, yeah, I can figure out what to do from here. So those are a couple of the things that I use. So hopefully y'all are able to Google and find that.
We actually, everybody, Blessing has put those links in the chat. So you can go to them right now. We want to make it as easy as possible for you to utilize these resources from Krys. That is amazing. So you're talking about all this stuff, and all that goes through my head is, oh, we're building psychological safety.
Uh,
That's what this is, psychological safety.
yep.
And as a chief of staff, how using these tools, how do you build that psychological safety, even though you're dealing with these individuals in the C-suite who have these, they're all type A's, they're all type A plus pluses, and you've got to wrangle them. Like, what do you do?
So I'm so glad that you talked about psychological safety. So let me toss this out there as one of the things that I have used as well. The CDC actually has six because, like I said, people don't realize the CDC has these guidelines because this, being emotionally dysregulated at work and at school and in the home, is a public health crisis. People do not realize it. I mean, the CDC put out guidelines. Within
Wow.
those guidelines, they talk about psychological safety and building safety into your organization, whether it is physical or psychological safety. So it is incredibly important. It's important enough that the CDC said it was important. So I use those six guiding principles to build the way that I work and to build my organization, right? Help build the organization according to some of those. And psychological safety is on there. So I'm glad that you mentioned it. not only do you have to feel safe with yourself, and this is where that awareness and education and feeling equipped, I feel safe with myself. I trust myself. I trust myself to be able to handle things. So, how do you build that with someone else? They also have to be able to trust you. So, being able to show up even and level every single time is what builds trust. And therefore, people feel that safety with you. You're going to go to a person that you know feels very confident in handling not only their
Mhm.
emotional situation, but that of others. We're not therapists. Well, some of us may be, but we're not going to become therapists. And that's what I like about all of these tools is that they have been designed by all of these organizations for the lay public, just like CPR has been, right? You don't have to
Right.
go and get a I am doing a PhD in this, but you do not have to, right? You don't have to know all. And
Gotcha.
I found that for me, just my CEO knowing that I was reliable in that way, my emotional acuity is stable. It is reliable. People know what to expect. Um, and it doesn't mean that I don't have emotion or get emotional.
Hmm.
It means that you can know what to expect. I'll either ask for a moment to process it. Can we reschedule this meeting? Can this meeting just become brainstorming and we won't take action because I don't feel like I'm in the place to do that? Uh,
Hmm.
that ability to ask for what you need is part of that emotional regulation, and the ability to take care of yourself and be clear allows you to help others with that, and they'll trust you.
Yeah, yeah. So you're talking about all these things that define emotional regulation. What are some things that are misconceptions about emotional regulation?
Oh, absolutely. So first of all, before COVID, nobody wanted to talk about emotional regulation. I have this work since long COVID. I'm maybe going on a decade of doing this work. It started out with my boss when I worked at University of Indianapolis asking me to put together a trauma conference. Because I had worked in academic medicine before in faculty affairs and professional development, I thought she meant like physical trauma, like emergency room.
Right.
Then that was the first time I found out what psychological trauma was, which I mentioned trauma quite a bit, but trauma is quite tightly linked with emotional dysregulation. And so that's why I look at that specifically, but you can have a lot of other types of emotional dysregulation, but I tend to look at trauma quite a bit because
Yeah.
that's the genesis for me. That's kind of where it started. Um, and as I was doing that, I really started to learn quite a bit about this emotional dysregulation and
Hmm.
people's misconception of it. Most people back then didn't want to talk about it. It is typically seen as a weakness.
Hmm. I can see that.
If you're if you identify as female while working as a chief of staff, which by the way, over 70% of chiefs of staff are female, um, being emotional. Oh, this woman, she was emotional at work. She
Mhm.
possibly do this job or make this decision, right? So it's seen as a weakness. Likewise, if you identify as male and you're working, oh, becoming emotional, oh, now you're not masculine, you're not credible. So it's this thing that we don't want to even talk about, let alone
Yeah.
become good at it. What I did notice while I was advising MBA, so fast forward after doing that conference and I learned so much more about it, I incorporated it into the way that I worked with my boss and the way I trained others to work themselves and to work with their boss and the people that they will manage. And one of the things that I learned to say, and I wanted to be sure to say that to this group, emotional regulation isn't a weakness, it's emotional dysregulation. Emotional dysregulation is usually the thing that people are responding to when they're responding negatively to your emotional self. Oh, she was too emotional. Well, it may be because you started crying in a meeting and then yelled at your boss, or, right? Like it's that
Mhm.
is what people are really responding to. People tend to respond very favorably to emotional regulation. You can be happy at work, you can shed a tear at work. Do you know how to do it appropriately and appropriate space to help others navigate it with you and to be able to navigate it on your own? We've seen
Yeah.
great leaders have great emotion, high emotion. Um, we think about any president. It doesn't have to be the current one. Think of any of your favorite president, right? And you have seen they'll lead the nation, and they've had to lead through tragedy, and people witness them being human. It is their ability to navigate it well.
Gotcha. And I remember you told me one time when you are trying to be cognizant of being just regulating your emotions, it's something as simple as if you do feel like you're being emotional, that you excuse yourself. There's nothing wrong with that and saying, you know what, I need to step out for just a moment. I'll be right back. You excuse yourself, you handle whatever it is. If you feel like you're tearing up, whatever. And then
Mhm.
you put yourself back into the situation where you've taken care of yourself. Now you can see how you can plug back into that environment.
Yeah,
I think that
yeah,
was something that stood out to me significantly when we were talking about this previously.
yeah. It's an excellent strategy that people respect.
Hmm.
People respect the dysregulated fall apart as much as the very controlled pull it together, right? People can respect
Right.
that. I will say I started using that, in my practice, like with my grad students. A lot of them would be interviewing for management consulting. Those are very difficult interviews. There's a technical piece to it. There are cases
Mhm.
presenting. And that was one of the things. Some of them would get very flustered, very frustrated. And these are MIT students, right? Like they're very good. And that was one of the things that I started telling them was if it ever gets that bad, step away. Let me, I need to step away for a moment to get some water or run to the restroom. I'll be right back. Because taking a moment to pull yourself together is a very respectable thing to do. Losing your cool in in the presence of others, which by the way is an offense because you are creating emotional dysregulation for them as well. It is not a thing to do to others. And so I think that that was key. The other thing is having an exit strategy. We all have an entrance strategy. We plan,
Oh.
we get the agenda. Don't nobody ever talk about how we're going to end this meeting, right? And it's not just what are the deliverables, when are we meeting next, what is the timeline, which people often forget to do, which is
Hmm.
remember to do, but also what will we do if this meeting goes a little bit left or gets off track or there's
Yeah.
conflict or people aren't engaged enough. How will we manage something that we didn't think of or prepare for? So
Yeah.
contingency plans, that's our job. What will we do if? And I know when a big conference and 2,500 attendees come, and there had been campus protests, and because we deal with the education sector as well as the corporate sector, that was my plan. Was to think about, well, what will we do if there are protesters? What do you do if someone has a medical event? What do you do?
Yeah.
Contingency planning. That's our that's part of our role.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Well, so it makes me think like how did this start for you? When do you have an example of a time where you had to be very intentional about emotionally regulating yourself, and how did it change the dynamics? What was going on in that moment? Because again, we don't talk about this enough, so I'm wondering if there was a catalyst or if there's just an example of one where you're like, this one time this is what happened, and
Yeah,
this is how I was
yeah.
able to change the outcome of this meeting or discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say that it really started with, I'm going to be honest here. I've been a problem employee. I have been a bad employee, a bad boss. I have been all of the things, right? Not to the point that it's anything egregious, because I pride myself on the fact that I'm actually still friends with all of my former bosses. And that's going back over 25 years. Still can call them up, still get lunch, consider many of them mentors because they know me, they know how I work, they know what my weakness
Mhm.
and what areas I could exploit and build some strengths. I was never told directly to work on my emotional regulation, but it was something that when I started doing it, I could see the fruits of my labor. The
Yeah.
started doing it, like I mentioned, I had put together a conference, and it had to do with this, with trauma, but which is really that affective piece of working. Affective meaning the emotional piece of working, domain of working. And we like to call ourselves effective leaders. And I like to say that I'm also an affective leader. Like I
Okay.
my feelings and the feelings of those around me and the feelings of work. So as I had put that conference together, I began to become aware of like all of these certifications that you could get and trainings that you could do and tactics and tips that I could be using. And so I went about intentionally building those. I would work on one about every 3 months, feeling like 90 days was enough to build a habit. And then I would
Mm.
the next skill. And so where I saw that play out is recently, actually, with my principal, with my CEO, we began having our regular Friday meeting, and y'all can drop in the chat how regularly you meet with your principal. We started off only meeting once a week when I very first started because it was an inaugural role. We didn't know that wasn't nearly enough. Then we went to every day. That was way too much. And now we Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 3 days a week. On our
Nice.
wrap up, I have noticed that is where we tend to rehash the week, or what went well, what didn't. We're also very tired. This particular week was just a few months ago. I was very sick. I continued to work all week with a fever, feeling awful. And so by the time we got to Friday, we had a bit of a rub, which we don't typically. I love my boss as a human being and as a person. I was a member of the association where I'm now chief of staff. So I was very familiar with these people, with the staff, the mission. So I drank the Kool-Aid. Like, I was all about it. So it surprised me that we were having a little bit of conflict that wasn't just about the work. It felt
Mhm.
for both of us. And I wanted to maintain our good relationship. And so, just a few minutes into the meeting, like I said, always have an exit strategy. I always know, going into a meeting, if I become dysregulated, or if I feel uncomfortable, I can tell, I can feel it. I'm breathing more shallow. I'm sweating. If anything like that, my voice starts shaking. If anything like that happens, I'll just say, you know what? I feel like we would be better served to revisit this conversation. Can we reschedule for later today? And so we actually rescheduled for later that day. And then we had that conversation. And it gave us both time to think and to process.
Wow.
We both came to it with just such a better approach. So
Hmm.
passion for ourselves and for the other person, and able to see the situation very clearly. It was around deadlines, which I'm sure everyone, you kind of get that rub around deadlines, and helped us to gain perspective as well, that in fact we are doing great. Our association is doing great. Our staff is doing great. We are doing great. We're doing great work. And it gave us a chance to get out of the weeds, which is why I picked this background. We get in the weeds, get out of the weeds, and
Yeah,
get that perspective and see it's not the end of the world. It's not worth picking a fight over. Pick your battles. This is something that was solvable.
gotcha.
And so, yeah. And then we went into over the weekend. I tested positive for COVID. This was a couple of weeks back. I had traveled for work, and I wound up testing positive for COVID. So when we met on Monday, it made a lot of sense. We were both tired and exhausted. And I was,
Right.
so yeah,
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. And it sounded like both of you had gone into that meeting um, kind of challenged. So it
absolutely.
wasn't just a one-way thing. It was both of you who had, there was some tension in there, and then you both at least were able to get to a place where like, we got to do this later because this is
Yeah.
not.
And I love that you said that, because, of course, when you have to always look at who's telling the story, we are always the victor in our own story. I told that story and it was like 100% him, right? But no, absolutely correct. Child, I'm the problem. It's me. Like, you know, sometimes you wonder, what role do you play in that? And that goes into
Yeah,
building psychological safety, because I was able to say, listen, I was sick. I was at my wits' end. These deadlines weren't working out great, because normally my deadlines rock out. Like, we deliver under budget and before deadline all the time. And
yeah,
these particular deadlines were the same way, but the approach, it was just challenging. There were a
yeah.
lot. So no, you're right. You're right.
Nice, nice. So you dropped a nugget at the beginning of your intro that I don't remember you telling me. So you're getting your PhD.
I am.
Congratulations. That is amazing. And what an accomplishment.
Yeah.
And I wish you smooth success because I know that's very hard. So not only do you have the uh, what do we call it? Not only do you have real life experience, you're also learning about the science behind this. What
Right.
does the science tell us about emotional regulation? How it impacts, your credibility or your ability to just do work?
Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's 85% of job success, these non-technical skills, or these affective skills, right? These
Yeah,
feelings. It's most executives, 44% of executives will say that they feel that people don't have enough emotional regulation or
yeah.
soft training at work. And then almost all large organizations say that it's the most important, right? These soft skills,
Hmm.
non-technical skills, including emotional regulation. And what we know is, when we do trainings for that, so don't just take the information from me. Go back and share this and figure out, like,
Hmm.
how do I share these resources with others? Because organizations that do that and train and equip around this actually see greater retention, better performance, higher revenue. Like,
Wow.
no, this is good for business. It's good for the self. It's good for business.
Right.
And so those are some of the the statistics around it, and then with the science around it. I spent a very long time married to a neuroscientist, and so we had actually started consulting together. When my consulting business first started, it was because I was doing this side of things. That
Mm-hmm.
side of things. I have an MBA in marketing, but my bachelor's is liberal arts and with a concentration in science. So I
Mm-hmm.
take the science and package it and make it marketable to people, which is why I often reference the CPR reference, which I was an instructor because I saw what they did there. They were able to take the science of something that seemed very difficult and package
Yeah.
it in such a way that people understood it. So that's a lot of what I do. And some of the science around it, I'm going to give it to you right now. Everybody take a deep breath in, keep going, expand the lungs completely, and let it out. It is the first time I have taken a breath that deeply today. Probably the same for you.
Yes.
And you talked about Anne Marie earlier stepping away, and everyone doesn't have that privilege. Everybody has the privilege to breathe because if you're not, you're not here. So even while someone else is talking, even in your meeting, even on your Zoom, nothing stops you, not from sighing while someone's talking, but from mindfully taking a very deep breath in. And I used to think it was the crunchiest yoga, granola thing to do. But when I really understood the science behind it, which
Mm,
that's your nervous system, because it sends the signal that you are not panting. If you are panting, you are in distress. You're in
gotcha.
or flight. So reminding yourself every so often. So sometimes as someone's telling me something stressful, I'll just take that really deep breath in. My boss is telling me about something that's happened. And it really does remind me to like be calm.
Yeah. Yeah. It, it makes me feel like, and this is going to sound really funny because I have to block in my breaks. If I don't block in lunch, guess what? I don't eat till dinner. Like all of these things, it almost makes me feel like I need to block in, take a deep breath. Take a deep breath after this meeting or after this is going on so I can remind myself because we get so involved in our day and just go, go, go. And like you said, um, those days where I actually would step away from my computer and I'd go meditate for 20 minutes, I'd come back refreshed because I didn't have my phone. I wasn't in the gadget. I was literally in my mind in this space, just disconnecting so I could reconnect more effectively and taking a simple deep breath. Like they always talk about that.
Hmm. But they never tell you the science as to why.
No.
You know,
Mm-mm.
tell you like the breathing box, like breathe in, the breathe in for 2 counts, the breathe out for 2 counts. Nobody tells you like why this is important. I did also start doing yoga. I also thought that was crunchy, and I began meditating. This was years ago, but I thought all of that was just this crunchy lifestyle that didn't make sense. But if
Yeah.
you look at the science behind it, I was actually at a conference not too long ago, and Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, I think is how he pronounces his name, that wrote the
Mm-hmm.
book, The Score. I mean, he's an MD. And
Mm-hmm.
he said that they rate meditation as more effective than medication. And I was like, wait, what? And that was just a few years ago. And that like just really drove what I already knew, just like drove it home. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so that all these types of stressors and those types of things are directly linked to the 11 um, biggest medical issues that take your life, right?
Yeah.
And so, this ability to manage our stress, our trauma, our eustress, which is good stress, EUSTRESS.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
talk about that. There is a good stress out there as well, but we have to be know these things first of all, know that they even
Mm-hmm.
and know how to manage them. Um, and you talked about getting out of your phone, and I will say this: sometimes we can get into our phone and make it work. Make your phone work for you. If you're a person that can't put that phone down, make it work for you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that I had started doing was I have Netflix and a Netflix account, as most of us do. I loaded it to my phone.
Uh-huh.
There is something called Headspace meditations in there. They're guided meditations. They're about 20 minutes long. And sometimes I would just play those. You can just put that on play and just relax. They walk you through exactly what to do. Their very first episode in that series, they talk you through the science of why meditation works.
Wow. Wow. Awesome. I'm gonna look that up. I have somebody that I follow on YouTube that does a lot of meditations, and that's for me, it's got to be I need to be able to listen to that voice. And it seems like it's such a simple thing, but I've gone through so many different people who do meditation. I'm like, I can't listen to this voice for 20 minutes. I got to find a voice that if I'm listening to you,
I
I
feel,
can listen to you.
all of these things, it's you got to date around, right? You may not
Hmm.
therapist the first time. You may not find the right principal the first time as a chief.
Yeah.
I lucked out. I did. You may not find the right meditation voice, guided meditation voice the first time around. The reason I picked that one, and it doesn't have to be this one for y'all. I like his British accent. I lived in the UK for a minute. So I just go with it. But there, pick your voice.
Yep.
Someone mentioned in the chat that they have some mindfulness apps that they use. I think they said on their Apple Watch. And Headspace, actually, they probably caught on. They now utilize many different voices. They have many people doing.
Nice.
And so, yeah, you just kind of got to date around with that.
Nice. So you talked about breathing, you talked about a little bit of meditation. What are some other like strategies, some useful things that you can tell my folks that they can start applying today so they can, just to be healthy? Because that's what it is. It's about being healthy.
Yeah. The other science behind this is that um, when something happens, we tend to we'll react with our emotional center first, which is your amygdala. Deep breathing helps you get out of that, as well as waiting 90 seconds. So,
Okay.
it needs to be made. Give yourself at least 90 seconds. You can give yourself a whole lot more. But studies do show that when you take that time to get out of your amygdala, right,
Hmm.
are now in your logical part of your brain and you're able to respond instead of react. So that was one of the tips that I found to be really useful for me. The other piece of science around like when we talk about stress and why does Friday get really rough? It's not only decision fatigue, you're tired of making decisions, so you make worse decisions. So at Christmas time, you might be approving some things that you normally wouldn't, right? Like you never know.
Right.
But also, is that there's something called a cumulative stress response. And that is where things accumulate, stressors accumulate, and you respond to them in a more robust way. So you can kind of think of it, if you are going through your week and something happens, it's the straw that broke the camel's back. So
Hmm.
aware that that exists. And so what you can do in that instance is take each situation as its own
Hmm.
and respond to it in a way as if nothing else had ever happened. How would I respond to this?
Oh.
And I know when I'm getting like emails or ask something in a meeting, I can, internally I'm getting very annoyed and very irritated because I'm like, this is the umpteenth time y'all have asked this.
Hmm.
Well, it's actually the first time that this person has asked about this process. It's that 10 people have each asked about so respond to it as if it is the first time, then every time that it is their first time.
Gotcha. Okay. That's really helpful because I'm gonna have to apply that one too.
Yeah. And I want to say that I do want to give time back, and I should have mentioned this to you. I meant to text this to you this morning. I like to give people like 7 minutes at the end to go away and do the thing because all of our schedules are packed. We never get an opportunity to do the thing. I want y'all, we'll open up for Q&A maybe sooner than later. And then in the last 7 minutes, because your calendar is already blocked for this, people do not know you're not still in this meeting, but you're going to do the work, which is to go and find that one thing that you are going to do. Is it mental health first aid, which is sometimes free or $40? When you go to that website
Hmm.
locator, there's a mental health locator, first aid locator. Find someone near you and sign up. Is it that you're going to start journaling? Set up your notes app. Are you going to use Google Keep? Are you going to use the notes app? Are you going to use OneNote in your phone and keep your notes there? Are you going to text it to yourself and then
Right.
paste all of that in to Chat GPT? So those are the things that I hope we can do at the end of this meeting.
You got it. So on that note, then what I'm going to do is we're going to do something a little bit, we're going to get ahead of that. I'm going to share my last screen with everybody. And I still do have questions for you, Krys. And I want to make sure that if you folks have questions, that again, you either raise your hand or just type it in the chat so we can answer it for you. But let me get you I want to share one more slide with you, with everybody. Oh, come on, Zoom. There we go. Uh, First of all, what I want to say is thank you to everyone that has been on this journey. And can you see my slide? I think it's not sharing. I think I have a dark screen.
It's waiting. It looks like
It, it's well, while it's hopefully going to load, I want to tell everybody thank you so much for joining me this year. Every year I do something new, and this year, second to none. It's been fantastic to be able to talk to people about um, the things that they do, how they're effective, how we can take care of ourselves, and just the skills that you need to be a successful chief of staff. And so again, Krys, your entire thing was just phenomenal. And you've given me some things to look at. And like I said, I still have some more questions, but I wanted to just remind folks we've posted the links to the resources that you have brought up. So I hope you all click on those links, learn a little bit more about emotional regulation. If you already know about it, this is going to add to your toolkit. If you don't know anything about it, this is going to start a new place in your toolkit. So this has been phenomenal. If you'd like to learn more about the things that I do for chief of staffs, please go ahead and book some time with me. Like I said, my assistant's putting the calendar link in there. We are talking about things that are real life. It's not just theory. And then stay connected with me because next year, I've got something very exciting planned, and I want you all to be on that journey with me. So it looks like I'm looking to see, are there any questions that you have for Krys? Like I said, I still have some more questions, but I also want to give you, like she said, I'm gonna do really good to try to do 7 minutes back, so you can all take what she has taught us today and apply it today. And I see, Nikki, you said you love this. You've been listening to the book, The Body Keeps Score, and it's amazing. Yep, I just keep hearing about that. Krys, thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Love that book because it is very true. And there's a science to it, and that's in the book as well. And as I mentioned, like that scorekeeping it does usually manifests in an illness that can end you, right? So
Mm-hmm.
very important how we treat our bodies and how we treat ourselves. It's not just fluff and it's not just a soft skill that you don't need. This is real life. It's probably the most real skill because this is the one that affects your longevity and the quality of your life. Actually, this one is life or death. Our technical
Right.
can be taught, and oftentimes are not life or death. I will also say that there's a documentary by a friend of mine. Well, how I met him was he was doing this documentary. Vander Kolk is in that, as well as Dr. Vincent Felitti, who started the ACEs score. That was that big Kaiser study. So
Mm-hmm.
documentary. I was in the documentary, and some other folks who do this work specifically, who are leaders in their field and help lead others. Um, and that movie, it's by this filmmaker named Luke Renner, Renner. I did not pre-send the link for this because I didn't think to out there as a resource. And it's called What Lies Inside. What lies within, what lies something. But the filmmaker is Luke Renner. And it's phenomenal.
Awesome. Awesome. Nikki, thanks for the comment. So she just said that we did talk earlier this week. We were talking about how to reset, and she did. She took some time for herself. And it said, including a vagus nerve reset. The vagus nerve being something that Bessel talks about in the book. So excellent. Thank you for sharing that, Nikki. I really appreciate it. As we're waiting for one or two more questions to come in, my last question for you, Krys, is as we're looking ahead to 2026, what are the things that you would advise folks to prioritize moving into the new year, considering everything that you've taught us today?
Right. I think the main thing, at least for me when I started this journey, is it's overwhelm. It's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, how do you become organized? There are a million ways to become organized. I had a Rocket book. I've done OneNote. I've done Asana. I've done Salesforce. I've done, right? Like there are all of these ways. And I feel like emotional regulation can actually feel overwhelming, right? It can feel very dysregulating. There are all ways. I began years ago just making a blueprint, a literal blueprint because I didn't want to be overwhelmed and I wanted to succeed in this way. And I just came to the realization that if I did anything any better, I would be better. So I would encourage us all in 2026 to find those four things that we think we can do better because then you can focus on one per quarter. So, four things you can do better with your emotional regulation. I conquered a lot of mine fairly quickly. I did some of them like in the same year. And I would say, like, the first quarter, I did mental health first aid. Then that next quarter, I had found out about trauma certificate. So I did that. And then I did critical incident stress management. That's also a certificate I did. So like the pops off, I got it. Um, and then I did some Title IX training because I came from a higher ed space. So for
Sure.
you who are in education or any highly regulated industry, there are often these trainings that are available. And they don't have to be trainings. They could be, I'm going to start journaling this first quarter, but pick four things that you know you could do that would make you show up better. I promise you, people will notice. People notice.
That's awesome. And that's such a doable goal. One a quarter. And you can take out, like, we all take out time for ourselves. I try to be very diligent about taking time out for myself, taking that time out from my husband and I. So we have our time together. And now with this little one, where I don't even really have to try to take out time for her because I'm just always with her. If I got a break, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go. But I like that you've made it something that is practical and doable. One thing every quarter that you can do to help you learn more about EQ and the trainings that you shared. The one you said is free. So there's things out there where it doesn't require an investment. It's going to require your time. So you can block that time out on your calendar, dedicate it, and then have conversations with people that are in your circle. I love to see change in myself. And
Absolutely.
this is another catalyst for us to see change in ourselves. Uh,
Mhm.
any last words that you want to leave with folks before I let them loose so they can go and take time for themselves in the last few minutes of the call?
Yeah, I do want to say that having worked with so many type A's, A plus pluses, analytical folks,
Mhm,
this can feel very fluffy. And it's not where I started either. I'm a data person, workforce development, that's like jobs, numbers, projections, that kind of thing. And so it feels oftentimes like this is not credible work or worthy work. Or addressing a weakness, but it's actually a strength you can build, and it is very worthwhile. You'll take good yourself, you'll take good care of others, and you will see the difference. And so do the little things, even if it's like get the book or start making your agendas with your exit strategy, even at the bottom. How will we
mhm,
this meeting? Or how will we end this if it doesn't think it will go? Start doing those things. And so just get started. And I think about like these analytical folks that I know. Um, I often just give them the challenge to go ahead and do it, measure what matters, and
mhm.
if people are trusting you more, if you feel more equipped, then it's working. And so to run the experiment, go ahead and try it and see.
Nice, nice. Thank you so much, Chris. This,
Thank you.
this has
Thank
been amazing and enjoyable.
And sorry for my background. I'm in Hawaii with one of my bosses. I have a high schooler that is in high school in Hawaii, and we go back and forth between Utah and Hawaii. And we got here yesterday. And so I did not have a lovely background. So I was like, well, let's just do this. So that's some of that emotional regulation, being able to know what you need and just make it happen.
Make it happen and enjoy Hawaii. Enjoy, enjoy. I love, what island are you on?
Oahu.
Oh, wonderful,
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
Well, like I said, this has been amazing. Every time I talk to you, I learn something new. I'm going to do my four goals. I'm looking at all of my wonderful listeners. I hope you all make that part of your journey next year is that you identify four things that you can do. Visit the links, connect with Chris, connect with me. I hope you enjoyed this. I did. We are 7 minutes on the dot, so I'm going to honor your ask. So,
Perfect.
folks, take what Chris has shared with you, and for the next 7 minutes, make that time about you, make that time about your health. And thank you again for joining. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Thank you. This was lovely. Thank you. Bye.